the defendant and counsel are present. Mr. Gaskins, I'm trying to kind of understand what point you're making. And you seem to have suggested that there is some practice of drug dealers. This officer is a drug officer, but he's not familiar with it apparently. Who has some mechanism to attempt to conceal their calls by calling a voicemail center in lieu of calling each other to get messages. Exactly. Okay. So you haven't lost me entirely. I think I understand. I understand what you're saying, but do you intend to, do you believe that through cross-examination of the state's witnesses or presentation of your own, of any evidence that you seek to elicit, that there will be any testimony by any witness that this practice actually occurred in this case?
I think the telephone records will show that.
And will show that with regard to what numbers?
The 201 exchange.
Well, I guess you're going to have to call somebody that is familiar with that practice and can elicit that, because apparently this officer is not familiar with that. Okay, I'm just trying to figure it out.
You understand where I'm going. I mean, you and I are on the same page.
Well, I understand what you're telling me, but I have yet to hear a witness who is prepared to answer your questions in the affirmative. Okay?
I'll finish up quickly.
All right, well, that's fine. All right, ask you to come in, please. Ms. Gaskins, do you have further questions?
Just a couple. I take it, Detective Heckman, that you are not familiar with a system by which individuals can exchange messages using a voicemail system.
That's correct. I have not seen that in any of my investigations.
What you have seen is a system by which individuals can purchase prepaid telephone numbers and call each other without leaving a trail on their own telephone.
If they purchase a prepaid telephone, that would become their own telephone.
It would become their phone, but with a different number. Right.
Right, so we would get those records for that assigned phone number to the prepaid phone, and then we'd have full records just like we have on these two phones here.
But you have to know the number of the prepaid phone in order to get those records, don't you?
You have to know the number for any phone number, because you have to put that number in your application and order to the phone company to have the records produced.
So if an individual buys a prepaid phone, makes one phone call on it and throws it away, there is a record out there somewhere of that one phone call having been made, but it's accredited to that telephone number.
Correct.
Not to some other telephone number that individual may also.
Correct. The records are only a representation of calls made from or received to that telephone handset.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Sure.
Very briefly.
All right.
Detective, just just to clarify, if I'm committing a murder, I can borrow someone else's phone and make a phone call,
Correct.
and it won't be on my phone record.
That's right.
And Your Honor, can I publish State's Exhibit A79 very quickly?
All right.
Detective, those records, these phone records are for, at the very beginning we looked at, they're the number for 7447651.
Yes, sir.
And there's also a number that ends 8581, and those are the two phone numbers assigned to this phone account.
That's correct.
Okay. And were you here earlier when Shay mentioned that she had been called by that 7651 number?
Yes.
Okay. And she said that she spoke to her mother on that 7651 number?
Yes.
Okay. Additionally, you're asked some questions about a 252 number. Going in your records to not the 7651 number anymore, but the 8581 number. That 252 number that you spoke of, that appears in the 8581 numbers records as well.
Correct.
Okay, so there's two phones under this phone record. We've been talking almost all day about 7651.
Right.
And you're asking questions about whether this 252 number exists in that 7651 number.
Wait, I'm sorry, say it a little bit slower. It will be
There's two phone numbers that are associated with this account. One is 7651, one that's 8581.
Correct.
The 7651 number is one that we've been talking about most of today, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're asked if you saw a 252 number under that number.
Right.
Looking at this record, that same 252 number also exists on the 8581 phone.
It does.
Okay. And in fact, on this 8581 phone number, on July 15th at 12:30, that 8581 number also calls Laura Ackerson's phone number.
Right.
Okay. Also, there are many points on here on July 15th. The 7651 number and the 8581 number appear to call each other. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing further.
All right.
You're aware that the two cell phone numbers are in the same household? Or do you know that?
1 minute they could be, and one phone could be taken out of the house the next minute. So it's, I mean, if they're on the same account, I don't have the subscriber information to confirm that. Are you asking if the two numbers are linked together under one account?
Well, they're linked under one account, aren't they?
I would have to see the subscriber information to confirm that.
And do you have any information about which one might, for example, be the telephone number dedicated to the children's line?
No, I don't have any information on that. Prior testimony showed that both numbers were being utilized and both people were utilizing them. It seems as they were being shared.
To both people in the same household or on the same account?
Seems that way.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Just one brief question, Your Honor.
All right.
On that date where you were looking for the cell phones by doing the court order to determine the location of those phones,
Right.
both those phones have been turned off and were being turned off and on intermittently, weren't they?
Correct.
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. Thank you, I'll see you can stand down. Witness is released. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, this time the state will call Matt Gadat.
Okay.
Coverage.
You may. Sir, come on up if you would, please. And there's a Bible up here. If you'd remain standing and put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand and face the clerk, please. Take your oath. Thank you.
You solemnly swear to testimony in this court of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a seat. Let's get up close to the mic and talk in the mic, please. Thank you.
Sir, would you state your name, please?
Matthew Gadat.
And Mr. Gadat, are you married to Shay Elmer Gadat?
Yes.
And do you know her to be the adult daughter of the defendant here, Amanda Hayes?
Yes.
turning your attention to July of 2011, the events that we've been discussing from that time period, at that time, were you in a relationship with Shay?
Yes.
And were you in a dating relationship with her at that point?
Yes.
And did you eventually get married later?
We did.
When did you get married?
April 20th, 2012.
And when did you first begin a relationship with Shay, or dating relationship with Shay?
March, I guess, of 2011.
And during that time, did you come to know Shay's mother, Amanda Hayes?
Briefly.
Okay. And do you recall when it was that you first met her?
It was on Mother's Day.
Of 2011?
Correct.
So that would have been in May of 2011?
Correct.
And what were the circumstances of meeting Shay's mother on Mother's Day?
I took them out to eat at the Angus Barn for brunch.
And on that occasion, was Grant Hayes, did he accompany you?
I believe he was in Hawaii at the time. He was not in town.
And thereafter, did you have an opportunity to meet Grant Hayes?
I did.
And can you recall when it was that you met Grant Hayes?
I believe that was on Shay's birthday. We went to eat at Conky.
And again, when is that?
The 7th of June.
And had you had an occasion to visit with Grant and Amanda Hayes at their apartment at Bella Park Trail?
Yes.
And do you recall when it was that, did you go to that apartment more than once or just one time?
I think just the one time, and I believe it may have been on Shay's birthday. It was when Amanda's mother had died.
So being on or about June the 7th of 2011?
I believe so.
You, do you recall the events, and specifically turn your attention to July the 14th of 2011? Do you recall Shay's activities that day, or speaking with Shay that day?
I'm not good with the dates, but what day of the week was that?
It would have been a Thursday.
Yes, I believe so. I don't remember if that was the day that her mom had called her that morning to go and pick up the kids.
Okay. And were you at home when Shay got that call, or did you find out about it later that day?
I believe I was home.
Okay. And so did Shay leave to go pick up the kids?
She did. I left for work, and I believe she left after I did.
And was that something that she was happy about doing?
She wasn't happy about the position. She didn't mind watching the kids, but I guess her mom was just kind of pushy about getting there in a hurry.
Did you indicated that you went to work? Where were you working at the time?
At a service station in North Raleigh.
And what time, do you recall what time you got home that evening?
If I had to guess, I'd say between 5 and 6.
And do you recall if Shay was that, I mean, were you living together
Yes,
at that point?
she was living with me.
And was she at home when you got home that evening from work?
I don't believe so. I do know that I believe she had called me and asked if Amanda and Grant could borrow the vacuum cleaner, my vacuum cleaner.
And there's been a maroon vacuum cleaner that's been introduced into evidence. Was that
That
your
was
vacuum
mine,
cleaner?
yes.
And did you agree to lend out your vacuum cleaner?
Yes.
What was the next thing that you knew about that situation?
I think the next thing I remember is that Grant and Amanda were going to spend the day looking at places in Kinston, perhaps move in to Grant's parents' house, and that's why she needed to watch the kids that day. And then I don't think we really knew anything else until the day that Shay was picked up.
Do you recall there being a conversation, or you having a conversation about attaching a hitch?
A trailer hitch,
to-
yes.
A trailer hitch to
I believe-
the Dodge Durango.
I believe that was on the Friday after.
Now the Dodge Durango, were you familiar with that vehicle?
I have seen it.
Okay. And did you understand that to be a vehicle that Grant and Amanda Hayes shared together?
Yes.
What do you recall about the trailer hitch in that conversation?
There were some questions about whether or not I could install a trailer hitch onto the Durango. I do remember saying that I probably could. I'd have to check with my boss because I would have to use the shop, and it was not my day to work the next day, which was a Saturday. So I'd have to ask permission to use a lift at work to do it.
And so, did you typically work Monday through Friday?
And every other Saturday.
So this particular Saturday, you were not scheduled to work?
Correct.
And so this conversation, who was the conversation between?
Well, technically it was between Amanda and Shay. And then Shay was asking me questions while she was on the phone with her mom, Amanda.
And so this was a telephone conversation?
Between the two of them, that I was just, I guess, standing by.
Okay. And were you being asked questions about this trailer hitch and
Yeah.
giving responses?
Yeah, I remember being asked, have I ever installed one? And then it got more technical, had I ever installed one on a Durango? And then had I ever installed one on that year of Durango?
And would this have been Friday after you got home from work that this conversation took place?
Yes.
What kind of was your response to that series of questions about installing a trailer hitch and being asked if you'd ever installed one on that particular model car?
It wasn't so much the question of whether or not I had installed one that bothered me. It just was the more questioning after that, after I agreed that, I could do it. And then they started questioning, I guess, my capability of putting it on. But it just got to the point where it was either uncomfortable or maybe annoying. And so at that point, I just backed out of it. I think I suggested they'd maybe try U-Haul or Raleigh Hitch.
So ultimately, you said, I'm not going to do it, or I can't do it, or...
I think in the end I said I wouldn't have time to do it.
Did you know what kind of hitch that you were being requested to install? Did you have any information about?
I may have asked some questions about what class or size hitch it was, but I don't remember exactly.
You, were you aware that Grant and Amanda had left town that next Saturday night?
I honestly don't recall.
Okay.
I do know, I remember at some point I did know that they had left town.
And you said, I think that the next thing that had happened was that Shay had been questioned by the police.
Correct.
And how did you find that out?
She called me from the back of the detective's car to tell me that they had stopped by, knocked on the door, picked her up, asked her to come in and answer some questions. I think that was about it. I believe that she also gave me the number to Karen Berry so that I could try to get a hold of Amanda. I believe I volunteered to try to get a hold of Amanda for her.
And was that that information given to you while Shay was still with the police detectives or on her way to give a statement, that is?
Yeah, as far as I know, she was still literally in the back of the police car.
And Karen Berry was Shay's aunt, Amanda's sister?
In Texas, correct.
And had you spoken to Karen Berry, or?
Not prior to that, no.
And did you agree to try to get up with Amanda?
I did.
In Texas?
I did.
And what happened when you called the number that you'd been given for Karen Berry?
I believe I called Amanda's cell phone first. There was no answer. And I believe that's when I told Shay, and then that's when she sent me the information, or sent me Karen's phone number. I then called that phone number, and Karen answered, and I asked if Amanda was there. I told her who I was and asked if Amanda was there and could talk.
And did Amanda actually come on the phone?
She did.
Okay, and did you have a conversation with her at that time?
Very brief. I just informed her that Shay had been picked up for questioning for whatever reason we did not know at the time. I just wanted to let her know because I didn't know what was going on, and I knew that she was out of town.
Why had you volunteered to try to get up with Amanda Hayes?
Wasn't sure exactly why Shay had been taken in. She couldn't tell me. I don't think she knew at the time. I guess my next instinct was to get a hold of her mother.
And what was Amanda's response when you told her that Shay had been picked up by the police and taken in for questioning?
I don't remember exactly. I believe she's told me thank you for letting her know and that they would be returning shortly to Raleigh.
Did there come a time that you actually went with Shay to speak with the police further?
The second questioning, yes.
Okay, and do you recall how long after the first questioning that took place?
I want to say it was the next day, but I couldn't be sure.
And during the course of that questioning, did you provide information with regard to the hall bath and the Bella Park apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And what information did you provide to the police regarding that bathroom?
I don't remember exactly what questions I was asked, but I do remember stating that I did see a black shower curtain, a rug, a toilet seat cover in the bathroom when I was there previously.
And you had been, I believe, indicated only been in that apartment one time previously.
I believe just the one time, yes.
And that would have been just a little over a month or so before this.
Yeah, I'm 99% sure it was I think it might have been Shay's birthday that year, the same day that her grandmother died. So we may have gone to Conkey, taken Amanda home, and then gone back over there that night, I believe is what we did.
Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, questions?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Gadat.
Yes.
Am I pronouncing it correctly? The first time that I believe that you met Amanda was on Mother's Day of 2011.
Correct.
And at that time, Amanda was very much pregnant.
Yes.
And in fact, the baby, Lily, was born on June 9th.
Correct.
Months later.
Yes.
Where was it that you met Amanda that day?
At the apartment, but I did not go inside. I waited outside. Shay went up to get Amanda and bring her down.
And one of the things that you were able to determine in that meeting was that Grant was off in Hawaii,
Correct.
while Amanda is home pregnant, looking out for the little Grant, and Gentle, Grant's taking off on a trip.
Yeah, I was told it was some sort of business trip.
And I believe the next time that you met Amanda was on June 7th, which was that Shay's birthday?
It was, and I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure that that's the same day that her grandmother died, Amanda's mom.
And that was a meeting that you guys had at a restaurant.
Yeah, we all met at Conkey for Shay's birthday to celebrate her birthday.
But was Grant there for that?
He did show up basically to drop Amanda off. The plan was for all of us to eat. They were running late. I believe Grant said that they got down in the car, he'd forgotten something, had to go back up and get it. That's why they were late. And we talked for a little bit. And about the time we were getting ready to get seated, he let us know that he had an appointment in Morrisville that he had to go to.
So
And
Did he
then,
stay for the dinner?
no, then he left.
You see him express any concern for Amanda's mother having died?
Not really.
You were aware that Amanda and Grant, somewhere along in this period of time, there was conversation about their moving to Kinston.
I do remember conversations of that, yes.
And that they would be living with Grant's mother and father at their home in Kinston.
That's what I was told, yes.
And that one of the things that they needed was a stitch on the Durango.
Yeah, I don't know that they ever told me why they wanted the hitch. It may have been to move. I don't recall exactly.
You didn't actually put the hitch on the Durango.
I did not.
And the reason I take it was because your ability to do it well had been questioned. Would that be fair to say?
Partly, yeah. I mean, just question beyond what I'm used to. You know, typically someone asks me and I say I can do it. You know, it's not too many more questions after that, but there's lots of more specific questions that kind of just made me uncomfortable, I guess.
You got a little irritated by it.
Correct.
So, in other words, if you don't think I can do it, go get somebody else to do it.
I think I just agreed to maybe I didn't have time to do it. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want it to be a big situation.
May I have this moment, Charlie?
All right.
That's all.
Anything else?
And it was Amanda that was asking those questions, right, that were being passed on to you about your ability to do it or your questions about that.
Yes.
I don't have anything further.
All right. Thank you. You may stand down. This witness is released. Call your next witness.
State called Patty Dwyer.
All right. Patty Dwyer. And if you just remain standing, put your left hand on the Bible there, and raise your right hand, please. Take your oath. Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God? I do.
Thank you. Have a seat. You may examine.
Thank you. Ma'am, could you state your name for the court?
My name is Patricia A. Dwyer, but I go by Patty.
Okay. And did you used to work at the U-Haul facility over here on Capitol Boulevard?
I still do. I have 2 jobs.
Okay. How long have you worked at that U-Haul facility?
This July will be 5 years.
Some years ago, do you recall speaking with the police about someone who had rented a U-Haul trailer from you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that person was Grant Hayes.
Yes, sir.
And do you remember talking to the police about your interaction with Mr. Hayes back in July of 2011?
Yes, sir.
And did the police collect a video from you as well?
They collected a video from the company. I didn't have access, but it was my understanding that they had produced proper legal documentation to take custody of it.
Your Honor, at this time I move to enter State's Exhibit 88.
Let me receive.
And Your Honor, may I publish that video at this time?
You may. How long is it?
It's around, I'm going to try to fast forward through parts of it, but it's around 10 or 12 minutes.
Okay. You may.
Mr. Dwyer, is this, are you pictured in this video around 10:45 a.m. on July 16th?
Yes, sir.
If I can skip this forward. Ma'am, is this person in the white t-shirt approaching the counter here, is that Grant Hayes who you had the interaction with?
Yes, sir.
And what were your responsibilities that day as this video rolls?
Normally I work, the front register customer service representative is actually the title of the position that I have, but I also have to do hitches and wiring. What we do, or what my responsibilities are, is as the customer comes in, greet them, and then start the rental contract, whether it's a truck, a trailer, or anything of that nature. We also do suggestive selling if they need any additional items for moving, and we also do storage. So we collect the customer's information before we start the contract. We see picture ID, and then, you know, answer any additional questions that they may have.
Do you remember talking with Mr. Hayes on this July day?
Yes, sir. When he approached the counter, we had a couple of conversations that were fragmented because we were hooking up a trailer for him and there was something wrong with the lights or something with the wiring, but I wouldn't have actual knowledge of that because I radioed to the guys. The guys would hook him up, and then he would come in. They would radio the information in as far as the trailer number, the tag number, and then I would complete the contract. The other part of the conversation that we had, because we were busy that day and it was taking a long time, is we had casual conversation, idle chit chat at that point.
At this point in the video, it appears that Mr. Hayes is speaking with another gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the person who's helping with putting
Getting the trailer hooked up, yes, sir.
and to get the trailer hooked up, obviously you have to have a hitch beforehand?
Yes, and you also have to have lights. It has to be wired for low voltage electricity.
And here you appear to be conversing with Mr. Hayes.
Yes, sir.
And did he seem stressed or nervous at all?
No, sir, not at that point. We had a conversation. He was telling me about the upcoming trip, because part of the information process when we code a rental is we need to know if it's a local in town, which is going to have one price structure. If it's going to be a one-way, then it's going to have another price structure. So part of the chit-chat at that point was, where are you going? How long do you need it for? He could get a better rate if he brought it back to Raleigh. A local rental, he could keep it for as many days as he wanted, but it would be the local rental price, which for a 5x8 is $18.95, not including taxes. And Randy, when he came in, he was telling me that there were issues with the hitch, that they would have to do either a connector or something else to make the lights work. So that's what was happening in that little segment of time, was telling him what his options were as far as rental, whether it was a local or a one-way. And he had, you know, when we were chatting about he said it was one way to Texas. He said that he was going on a fishing trip with his family.
Okay. And I think he went out of frame in this video. Is that Mr. Hayes again at the counter?
Yes.
And so he told you he was going out of town for a fishing trip?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then the other things that we had discussed, when they said that his trailer was ready and hooked up and everything else, part of our policy or our program at U-Haul is suggestive selling. So we asked if he needed any other moving supplies, boxes, tape, drop cloths, and he was very inquisitive on if the plastic would keep coolers of fish bait secure, because he didn't want to spill anything in the back of the trailer, and he didn't want anything spilled in the contents of his vehicle.
And here I guess we're at 11:06 a.m. on July 16th, and is that him again talking to you behind the counter?
Yes, and then he, a couple of things when he left the frame, he said that he needed to make a couple of phone calls. And one of them specifically was that he needed to call his wife to make sure that they didn't need anything else.
Did you recall him using his phone in your facility on that day?
Yes.
And could you tell who he was talking? Did you tell the nature of the phone call he was having?
No, other than the fact that when he had left, and I'm not sure how it played out on the tape, he just said that he needed to call his wife to make sure that there wasn't anything else that they needed. And it seemed to me, and I could be mistaken, that he'd started a phone call, walked away, started the phone call, and then came back to the counter. But I'm not sure on that one.
Did his demeanor ever change that day?
One of the things when we were chatting, what I noticed, because of what I do, I notice all kinds of things about people. When they come in, they're under stress because it's moving day and there's a major event that's happening in their life. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. One of the things that I noticed about him was that he was glassy-eyed. The term that I would use is either sleep deprived or punch drunk, because he was kind of giddy. And I had made a comment, and that was one of the things that had started the conversation when I looked at his license and everything else, and his last name was Hayes. We had a at-length conversation about Jimi Hendrix and Purple Haze, and he said that he had been up all night playing music with friends and things of that nature, but he seemed more punch drunk and sleep deprived than he did anything else. He was never aggressive. He was not an irritated customer, if you will. He never used any profane language. He was very well-mannered and polite. He was almost very amiable.
Is that him again
Yes.
walking and approaching the counter?
Mm-hmm.
And if you could you tell the jury, do you recall what size trailer he had rented?
It was a 5x8, an AV. It's probably the smallest, well, it's the medium size that his vehicle would tow safely.
Okay. So not the smallest, not the biggest.
Correct.
Okay.
And he was just very specific that he needed, it needed to be big enough to haul coolers full of fish bait. And at that point, he had already made the phone calls to see if they needed anything else, because I had the drop cloth in my hand.
Okay. Do you
And one of the
recall
things,
how big that drop cloth was?
we have 2 or 3 sizes. One's love seat, one's sofa, well, sofa love seat, and then there's one for carpets. And one of the things it conceals is if you had rewound the tape, but on the other side of the end and round, that's what we call it, where the tape is, he was concealed because he came around, and we have them all at the front, and he had passed it between the N2 register. So if you went back to pay attention, that's when he started passing those things over, because we had that conversation on what he would need.
Okay.
And then, like I said, when he said that he needed to call his wife, and he had walked away from the front counter, but he never left the store. He stayed inside the store the whole time until he actually left.
The drop cloth, what's the texture of that material? What's it look like?
It's a little bit thinner than a cheap shower curtain liner. Maybe not by much, maybe 3 mil or 6 mil, but it's probably a little bit thicker than a Ziploc baggie. but not as thick as the shower curtain, but it's very flexible.
And it's a plasticky material.
Hmm.
When you get the trailer, or when he got the trailer, did he also get like blankets like this?
Now that I don't recall.
Okay.
I know that we had offered up, and the one thing that he kept saying was most of the packing was already done. They were just transporting coolers of fish guts. Bait, I'm sorry, fish bait.
I'm gonna speed this up a little bit. Again, you have this conversation with him at the register.
Mhm.
And there, does he appear to take his phone out at this point?
Mhm. That's where he was making sure there wasn't anything else that they needed. He said he had to call his wife.
Does it appear that he concluded that call and is
Yes, sir.
concluding the transaction with you?
Yep, we were almost through at that point. One of the things that it doesn't show is we have walkie-talkies that sit on the counter that when they get them hooked up, then we can finish the contract and send them out with their paperwork and they're done.
Earlier, I believe you testified about the price of that trailer. Did you say that it's cheaper if you take it to Texas and bring it back, it's cheaper than if you just take it to Texas?
It would be considered a local in-town rental. And yes, sir, I did explain that to him, that he could rent it for $18.95 a day and then, bring it back. And for whatever 24-hour period, it would be $18.95, not including taxes or insurance. But if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, the one way to Texas was close to $200. But I don't have that information in front of me.
Sure.
So that was one of the things, was that he could, if they were just a quick trip, that was a way to save money. And he said that he wasn't interested. It was definitely one way.
I think we're almost there. Fast forward this a little bit. What
Those
is
are
that?
Furniture pads.
I'm sorry?
Those are furniture pads.
Those are the pads, the blanket material.
Mhm.
And I guess at this point, is his car been hooked up and he's carrying this
Mhm.
out?
Mhm.
And those are some boxes as well.
Mhm.
And that other employee's helping carry that stuff out.
Correct. Loaded trailer. So for all intents and purposes at that point, he should be done.
Gotcha. Here, I have one moment.
All right.
That's of dropping off the trailer. Could you just briefly describe that?
Normally what happens on a one way, and that's what it's coded as when it leaves. Everything has to be paid for before it leaves our site. There's two ways that it can happen. And that was one of the things that I discussed with him, is that he didn't know where he was going to drop it off in Texas. So on the contract, we left it open. There should be a 1-800 number, and I explained to him, when you get to Texas, call this number. They'll tell you where the local or the closest drop is to wherever it is you end up, which is one option. And so what happens is I believe he got 2 copies of the contract because I explained to him if you drop it off after hours, all you have to do is disconnect it, leave it on the lot, and what they will do is check it in and email you a receipt that they received it. The other option that I explained to him was that if he selected a drop-off location, that he would have to take it there. If he took it anywhere else, it'd be wrong destination fee. So if I'm not mistaken, on his particular contract, we left it open where he could drop it off wherever he wanted to. He just needed to make sure that he put a copy of the contract in the Dropbox. But he could do so after hours. It didn't have to be while the facility was actually open.
After you had this conversation about him and the coolers full of fish bait, and where he didn't know where he was going to drop it off, did you ever see him again?
Personally, no, but I...
Well, thank you, man. Nothing further.
All right.
Good afternoon, Ms. Dwyer.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you some questions, if I may, about his demeanor when he was in the store. You indicated that he was glassy-eyed.
Yes, sir.
And I apologize, but you said, after you said glassy-eyed, you used another word that I didn't catch. Do you remember?
Sleep deprived or punch drunk. And it's a old term that my grandmother used to use when people do loopy or crazy things because they're tired or overworked or overwrought.
It appeared to you that he had been up all night, didn't he?
Well, he said he'd been up all night, but I asked because his behavior, it was just, he was singing kind of in between conversations and things like that. And he was pacing a lot, so.
And his eyes were glassy, weren't they?
They appeared to be, yes, sir.
He told you he had been up all night, and you had already concluded that he had been up all night, hadn't
Yes, sir.
you? And did I also hear you say that he was somewhat giddy?
Yes, sir.
But I also hear you say that he appeared to be fairly calm,
Yes, sir.
not like most of your customers who are in there in a hurry to try to make it someplace.
He appeared calm.
And after I believe you said that he wanted to call his wife to find out if he needed something else.
Before he left, correct.
Before he left. And he had already purchased all of the things that you've talked about.
To my best recollection, before we completed the contract, because it was all going to be paid for in cash, because it was a one-way, he said that he needed to call his wife before he left to make sure that he didn't need or they didn't need anything else before they left on their trip.
And after he did that, did he come back then and tell you that he needed some packing blankets?
Now that one I know what we saw on video. We could have covered that conversation before they actually went out of the store. And the reason that I say that is when they come in, our process is to ask them if it's going to be local or one way. Once we get everything keyed in on the contract, then we ask, do you need any other packing supplies, pads, dollies, boxes, tape, or anything of that nature? So I know that I asked him because that's part of our training, but I don't have the receipt in front of me to say that, yes, that's what he purchased or didn't purchase or rented or didn't rent, because I don't have it in front of me.
May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Dwyer, if I may hand you what I have marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 56, and ask you if that appears to be, in that photograph, some U-Haul
Yes.
packing blankets covering a hutch of some kind.
Can I touch it?
Yes, yes, ma'am, please.
Yes. That was the clear plastic bag that showed in the video that he walked out with.
And these are packing blankets.
Yes, sir.
And the purpose for packing blankets when you're moving is to protect things like furniture from being damaged inside of the trailer?
That's what our intent is when we rent them, yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay,
Very briefly.
sure.
He never mentioned furniture to you that day, did he?
No, sir, he didn't.
Okay, but he did buy some plastic sheeting.
Yes, sir.
And that picture that you just looked at that has some blankets on it, that's different than the plastic sheeting that you purchased.
That would be correct.
And he talked about that because there are coolers full of fish bait.
Correct.
And he said that they were already packed.
Correct.
And you spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes with him.
Yes, sir.
And in 10 or 15 minutes, you could tell that he had been up all night.
That's what he said.
Okay.
But I asked. We had conversation because we were waiting for them to finish the wiring on his vehicle.
Yard purchase clerk.
All right.
And then I had you listed marked for identification purposes, the state's exhibit A87. Is this a contract of that one-way rental for that trailer?
Yes.
And does it list some of the things that were purchased that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I moved to enter state's exhibit A87 into evidence.
That we received.
And briefly, could you tell the jury what it was that was purchased that day?
He got a bundle of medium boxes. He got a universal receiver lock, and what that is the Toe Start 1, which is the receiver that goes in the hitch itself, because the hitch was already installed. It goes through that to keep anybody from disconnecting. It's almost like a pin, but it's got a lock on the end. And then he also got the ball and mount, which is the part that goes into the receiver and has the ball attached so they could hook up the trailer, because evidently this vehicle already had hitch itself installed. It just didn't have the wiring, and the Toe Start 1 is what we call it, which is the receiver portion in the ball. And then he also got the sofa cover, which is plastic, but there's nothing on here about the furniture pads.
Okay. But in that video, you saw him take out the furniture bags?
Yes.
Okay. And that was July 16th of 2011?
Yes.
Okay. In that brief amount of time that you spent with him, you could tell those things about how his glassy eyes and how he appeared?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Ma'am, it was after he talked to his wife that he ended up with the packing blanket.
Yes, sir.
Was- And the photograph that you have seen are U-Haul packing blankets, aren't
They appear to be, but we have different styles, so I couldn't say specifically.
they? But these are of the same type that you carry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. This witness is excused. All right, folks, it's 20 after 5. Appreciate you staying a little later to get this witness off. We're going to stop for the evening. Please understand you haven't heard it all. Keep an open mind. Don't form or express any opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant or any matter in controversy. Be careful about your conduct. I promise we'll get everybody here at 9:30 in the morning, so if you all get here, we'll be here, and we'll start promptly. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. See everybody in the morning at 9:30.